of thousands of litres of fuel which spilled into.
The crash happened just after 7:30 this morning, 2 kilometres south of Pambula. The Cox tanker from Eden was transporting fuel north when it overturned on the Yowaka bridge on the Princess Highway, spilling 38,000 litres of fuel into the river. There were 3 explosions as the tanker burst into flames.
Obviously being petrol, it's been a very hot and intense fire. Most of the fuel has burnt off with only minimal amounts actually staying in the waterway.
Amazingly, the driver managed to escape the inferno.
The driver received minor injuries and was conveyed by ambulance to Pambula District Hospital.
Fire crews, together with the Ports Authority, successfully placed floating booms across the river to contain the fuel.
Putting the additional booming in place so that we can run, as the tide comes in, we can run the material that's on the surface of the water into an area where we can contain it and absorb it with the materials, and then it can be disposed of.
Police were forced to evacuate the nearby area and close the highway in both directions following structural damage to the bridge. At this stage, it remains closed to traffic, while the bridge repair bill is expected to run into the thousands of dollars. In the meantime, traffic is being diverted via Nethercote and Back Creek roads.
The highway and the bridge will remain closed until it's been inspected by RTA bridge engineers.
Police are investigating whether speed was the cause of the crash. Nicole Charlton, WIN News.
On the far south coast, 37,000 litres of fuel leaked from the tanker into the river. Emergency crews placing floating booms on the water to stop the petrol reaching nearby oyster farms. The blaze was so intense it caused structural damage to the bridge. The Princess Highway was closed all day at the scene of the accident. A single lane reopened.
Just for environmental catastrophe, a petrol tanker crashes and burns 70 kilometres north of the Victorian border. The truck rolling on the Yowaka bridge at Pambula, 3 explosions follow as the tanker's 38,000 litres of volatile cargo sloshes into a river.
It's been a very hot and intense fire.
Police evacuate nearby residents, and with structural damage to the bridge, motorists are turned back. The Princess Highway shut down.
The highway and the bridge will remain closed until it's been inspected by RTA bridge engineers.
Containing the spill, the primary problem for fire crews. Booms are now floating around the spill to stop fuel creeping into nearby oyster leases on the Pambula River. So far, so good. Although the truck is a write-off, the driver is okay. Police hope he can shed light on those final moments before impact. One lane of the bridge is likely to be reopened to traffic shortly. Darren Roberts, 10 News.
Later, but first, a truck driver has kicked his way free of a burning petrol tanker after it exploded in a fireball on the Princess Highway near Pambula this morning. The inferno damaging the Yowaka bridge. This is the scene which greeted horrified rescue crews just before 7:30 this morning. The driver of this Cox petroleum tanker was heading north toward Pambula when he lost control on a bend, veering onto the wrong side of the highway before striking Armco railing, which mercifully prevented the truck from plunging into the Yowaka River metres below. The tanker then swerved back onto the road before rolling and rupturing its fuel tanks. Moments later, the vehicle was engulfed in a fireball, the bulk of its cargo, 38,000 litres of fuel, sending flames metres into the sky.
The vehicle caught alight and some of the fuel and oil was lost into the river. The fire at this stage is now under control.
Miraculously, the driver, an Eden man, managed to kick his way through a window and run to safety. He was transported to Pambula Hospital, suffering minor lacerations. Back at the scene, fire crews were battling to control the inferno, which had blocked both lanes of the Princess Highway. Waterways, Fisheries and the Environment Protection Authority were also quickly on scene to mop up the fuel which hadn't burned dry, installing a boom to prevent it sullying the Yowaka River and nearby oyster leases.
Being petrol, it's been a very hot and intense fire. Most of the fuel has burnt off with only minimal amounts actually staying in the waterway.
RTA engineers then arrived to inspect heat damage to pylons on the Yowaka Bridge late this afternoon, deeming it safe enough to reopen one lane to traffic in a temporary 40-kilometre speed zone. RTA spokesman Tony Arts says the bridge has sustained significant damage and a further detailed investigation will begin tomorrow. An inquiry is also underway into the cause of the crash. Charges have not yet been laid.
To flames. The driver had seconds to kick out the front windscreen, escaping with minor burns and cuts. The fire couldn't have had a better fuel source. 38,000 litres of diesel, super and unleaded petrol straight over the bridge into the Yowaka River. The flames quickly spread across the water, part of the river on fire. In boats, fire crews sprayed their wake onto the flames. With the fuel that hadn't burnt threatening the river, fisheries officers took off downstream to get floating booms in place.
It's been a very hot and intense fire. Most of the fuel has burnt off, with only minimal amounts actually staying in the waterway.
The highway's northbound lane is now open. It could be weeks before the southbound lanes open. Part of the bridge has structural damage and it's unsafe for traffic. Natalie Barr, 7 Nightly News.